As the governor of Massachusetts, I now convene the Lowell Committee to hear testimony in the case of convicted felons Nicola Sacco and Bartholomew Vanzetti. After listening to the testimony, the committee will advise me whether or not to grant clemency to these men. I first call on the American Civil Liberties Union to testify. You may come up. What is the name and purpose of your organization?
Our name is the American Civil Liberties Union. Our purpose is to defend and preserve the individual rights guaranteed to all people in this country by the Constitution and the laws of the United States.
Do you believe that the anti-immigrant sentiment of the period prevented Sacco and Vanzetti from getting a fair trial? Why or why not?
We do believe that the anti-immigrant sentiment of the period did prevent Sacco and Venzetti from getting a fair trial because they were convicted in a trial that was marred by prejudice against immigrants and radical beliefs.
Should Governor Fuller grant Sacco and Vanzetti clemency?
We firmly believe that Governor Fuller should grant Sacco and Venzetti clemency, for there was not enough solidified evidence against them. The police did not use a lineup to have witnesses identify the suspects and instead had Sacco and Venzetti placed alone in the middle of the room, posed as the suspects. By doing this, the police actively showed prejudice against the two of them.
I now call on the nativists to testify. What is the name and purpose of your group?
We're the nativists, and the purpose of our group is that we want to slow down, if not stop, the flow of immigrants coming into our country. For as you can see, they are ruining our American way.
Do you believe that the social tensions of the period prevented Sacco and Vanzetti from getting a fair trial? Why or why not?
We do think that they had a fair trial because they had stable jobs and they had a good house living. And these immigrants, they came into our country and they invaded it, and they shouldn't have done that, and they should have stayed in Italy.
Should Governor Fuller grant Sacco and Vanzetti clemency?
No, Governor Fuller should not grant these criminals clemency, for they match the description of the two Italians seen at the crime scene. Besides, they lied about their whereabouts on that day and concealed their form of obtaining their weapons.
Thank you. You're excused. I now call on the international workers of the world to testify.
What is the name and purpose of your organization?
The name is Industrial Workers of the World, and our purpose is to gather working class members into one big union.
Do you believe that the labor tensions of the period prevented Sacco and Venzetti from getting a fair trial?
Yes, we believe the trial was biased. The two didn't have high-income jobs, so it's very easy to believe that the two would commit these kinds of crimes. On top of that, the judges made a quick decision, so we believe that it could have been influenced by discrimination towards immigrants or the fact that the two have very radical beliefs.
Should Governor Fuller grant Sacco and Venzetti clemency?
Yes, we believe Governor Fuller should grant clemency to Sacco and Venzetti because prosecution's testimony was false. I say this because he claimed that Venzetti spoke unmistakably clear English, but this couldn't be true because Venzetti spoke broken English.
Now call Plymouth Cordage Company to testify. What is the name of your company?
The Plymouth Cordage Company.
How do you know Bartolomeo Vanzetti?
Venzetti worked at the union. We know him because of his hard work and dedication he put into the union in order to raise funds for the working class community.
Do you believe that the labor tensions of the period prevented Sacco and Venzetti from getting a fair trial?
It did prevent them from getting a fair trial because of the fear of radicals at the time. And so because they had a radical ideology and supported many unions, a lot of people feared that because they disobeyed the government.
Should Governor Fuller grant Sacco and Venzetti clemency?
I believe that Governor Fuller should grant Sacco and Venzetti clemency. This is because of the factors that made the trial unfair. One of the factors was the proclaimed bullet that belonged to one of their guns. Although it was the same type of bullet, that does not mean it came from their specific exact gun.
Without evidence of them being actual murderers, they did not deserve to be murdered themselves. Their families deserve clemency. Although they were trying to hide
anarchist literature from the authorities, it just proved how much they cared about suspects. And although someone gave an accurate description of Sacco, that does not mean it was true. A lot of males have the same build and height that he did. It does not prove anything.
I will now call on East Boston Anarchist Organization to testify. What is the name and purpose of your organization?
The name of organization is East Boston Anarchist Organization, and the purpose is to create a society based on freedom, mutual respect, and cooperation.
Do you believe that political tension of the period prevented Sacco and Venzetti from getting a fair trial?
I do believe the political tension of the period did prevent Sacco and Venzetti from having a fair trial because of their immigrant status. They fled their country when their country was at war, and the prosecutors used that against them when it had no relevance to the case.
Should Governor Fuller grant Sacco and Venzetti clemency? Why or why not?
Yes, because the defense attorney, Fred Moore, argued that there was no clear evidence to tie his claims to the murders.
A cap at the scene was said to be Sacco's, but it didn't fit him. Also, the type of bullets used to kill the two men did match Sacco's gun, but it cannot prove it came from his gun.
I will now call on officials in the Palmer raids to testify. What is your job?
Our job is to arrest suspected foreigners of anarchy and communism and deport them.
What role did you have in the Palmer raids?
We are officials. We entered buildings and seized records, and we've arrested over 6,000 suspected radicals and deported them.
Do you believe that the anarchists like Sacco and Vanzetti are dangerous to American society?
Yes, because they were followers. They had suspicious background and were followers of Luigi Galliani, who was an Italian anarchist who advocated in revolutionary violence, including bombings and assassinations.
Should Governor Fuller grant Sacco and Vanzetti clemency? Why or why not?
No, because the bullet that killed the victim could be traced back to Sacco's gun, and the person who confessed to the crime cannot give liable details.
That will be all.
The Lowell Committee has rendered its verdict on whether Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti should be granted clemency. I have decided to take their advice. The decision, therefore, is that clemency will be granted. The Lowell Committee is now adjourned.